Hey, welcome to GothCast. I'm Dr. Sanders, and today I'm taking a look at the Addams Family and Evilution. And we're going to be talking about the history of the Addams Family and how it started with the original New York Times comic strip, which is largely compiled in here. I think, well, let's just get to it. Now, the Addams Family was created by Charles Addams instead of 1938. Try and understand that, when the Addams Family was created, Franklin Roosevelt was the president at the time. That's pretty crazy to think how long they've been around. But the original comics inside of the New Yorker were published from 1938 to 1988 when Addams unfortunately passed away. And the original idea didn't start as a family. It basically started off as Morticia, and then he slowly added, Gomez and the kids and Grandma Frump. In fact, some of the designs even changed. You have Lurch in here, and the first comic that had Lurch in it, he doesn't have his, typical Frankenstein knockoff look. It's more of like a big football player, ogre-looking kind of guy. What do you want, baby? What do you want? What do you want? Huh? What do you want? Look at the camera. Look at the camera. So just in case you're not familiar with the Addams Family, let's do the Addams Family roll call. So first we have Gomez and Morticia, the parents. Then we have Wednesday and Pugsley, Lurch, the butler, Grandma Frump, who is implied to be Gomez's mother, Thing, which actually isn't just a hand at this point. Thing is actually this kind of little guy who can be found in most of the comics hiding somewhere. It's not just a disembodied hand, although there is a comic that has, hands coming out of record player and it's supposed to be Thing. The original Thing was usually like in a little cage or hiding on a windowsill or hiding in the snow. So it's pretty cool that later they changed the character to be something totally different with, a similar idea. And of course we have Uncle Fester. But a lot of things we associate these characters with wouldn't come around until the 1964 television show. Fester's light bulb trick and everything like that. I mean, they all do have some of their traits, but like Gomez smoking a cigar, that's not in the original drawings. Although Charles Addams always imagined that Gomez would smoke, he never did draw him actually smoking anything. You do have some big differences, especially with what would come later with characters like Wednesday, because Wednesday seems to be actually a pretty happy child, and very different from the 90s character that a lot of people are familiar with and think is the, kind of only way that Wednesday Addams is portrayed. Wednesday often smiles and seems like a very happy child. But I think one of the things that is most interesting about the Addams Family is just how strikingly different it was than what a lot of mainstream comics and a lot of mainstream art at the time was doing. I mean, you gotta remember, this is published in the New York Times. Something that's read by so many people. And to have a family that, drinks poison, has a pet octopus, is, kind of, sort of toying with the idea of black magic and that, there's brooms and witch sort of iconography and stuff. That's something that I find incredibly interesting, that Charles Addams managed to capture this sort of quirky personality as characters and was able to introduce it to a mainstream audience and was so popular that it still is being adapted to things today. That, to me, is really striking. And I think, he really kind of drew from a lot of cool places, obviously like classic mythos of dark and stuff. In fact, the house of the Addams Family is said to be largely based on his tastes in that he had suit of armors and weapons and stuff, and Gomez in a lot of versions of the Addams Family is often playing with swords. And then the house of the Addams Family, that is largely inspired by a lot of the styled houses inside of Westfield, New Jersey. How appropriate, right? The Addams Family came out of New Jersey, yeah? And so if you take a look at some of the houses around that area, you can definitely see the Addams Family house. And that, to me, is sort of interesting. Charles Addams pulled on a lot of things that he liked, a lot of things he had seen, and made this family that a lot of people seem to relate to. Although I will say, these are one-panel comics. So you can't really get a lot across in that. I mean, you can stylize it a certain way, and you know, they have a phrase and everything, but a lot of what the people would come to love about the Addams Family, and a lot of the charm of their relationships and, you know, the love and all that stuff, is here in some way, but not quite as developed as we would get later. Mostly because of the format. But this is still a great, great comic strip and a great idea. And of course, I mean, it has such longevity, even in just the comic strip. From 1938 to 1988, that's 50 years of comic strips. There's 150 one-panel comics. And what you've been seeing throughout this video is specifically the book, The Addams Family in Evilution. And I really like this book. It's strictly Addams Family stuff, and there are a lot of Charles Addams books out there that compile Addams Family comics with other sets of his comics, because he did not just focus only on the Addams Family. But this one is great. I just like to have it all in one place. The pages and the print quality are amazing, I have to say. It's a very heavy, dense book, and I really like it. And while most of the comics are in black and white, the color ones really, really pop with his unique style. And I like the back index too, that gives you the year of every single comic, and you know, when it was published or where it's from, if it was a cover or if it was unpublished until this book. And this book does contain quite a few unpublished sketches and things like that. So if you're looking to check out the Addams Family comics, I actually really recommend The Addams Family in Evilution. Evilution, I get it? So that's my look at the Addams Family comic strip, and specifically the Addams Family in Evilution. I just have to say, you know, it's a good start for the Addams Family. And you have a lot of the traits and stuff I like. You know, one thing I really like about these comics is, or the one thing I really like about the characters is that Morticia's like way taller than Gomez and nobody cares. They just love each other. I love that. It's like, it's, you know, adds to their odd appeal, right? I mean, it's not a big deal, but a lot of people think that's a big deal, which is kind of what the Addams Family was meant to go against. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Of course, you could like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. And check in soon for another Addams Family video. What could I possibly be looking at next? We have to find out. So just wait and all that stuff. Stay spooky.